Debriefing. Frail long hair, brown with reddish lights in it. Artificial-looking hair, actressy hair. The hair she had at 23 when I met her. I was 19. Hair too youthful to need tinting then, but too old now to have exactly the same color. A weary, dainty body with wide wrists, shy chest, broad-bladed shoulders, pelvic bones like gulls' wings. An absent body one might be reluctant to imagine undressed, which may explain why her clothes are never less than affected and are often regal. One husband in dark, phallocratic mustache, unexpectedly successful East Side restaurant owner with dim mafia patronage, separated from and then divorced in fussy stages. Two flaxen-haired children who look as if they have two other parents, safely evacuated to grassy boarding schools, for the fresh air, she says. Autumn in Central Park several years ago. Lounging under a sycamore, our bicycles paired on their sides. Julia's was hers. She had once bicycled regularly. Mine was rented. She admitted to finding less time lately for doing, going to an Aikido class, cooking a meal, phoning the children, maintaining love affairs. But for wondering there seemed all the time in the world. Hours, whole days. Wondering. About, she said, looking at the ground, oh, I might start wondering about the relation of that leaf, pointing to one, to that one, pointing to a neighbor leaf, also yellowing, its frayed tip almost perpendicular to the first one's spine. Why are they lying there just like that? Why not some other way? I'll play, 'cause that's how they fell down from the tree. But there's a relation, a connection. Julia, sister, poor moneyed waif, you're crazy. A crazy question, one that shouldn't be asked. But I didn't say that. I said, you shouldn't ask yourself questions you can't answer. No reply. Even if you could answer a question like that, you wouldn't know you had. Look, Julia, listen, Peter Pan. Instead of leaves, that's crazy, take people. Undoubtedly, between 2 and 5 this afternoon, 84 embittered Viet veterans are standing on line for welfare checks in a windowless downtown office, while 17 women sit in mauve leatherette chairs in a Park Avenue surgeon's lair waiting to be examined for breast cancer. But there's no point in trying to connect these two events. Or is there? Julia didn't ask me what I wonder about, such as, what is wrong? A thick brownish-yellow substance has settled in everyone's lungs. It comes from too much smoking and from history. A constriction around the chest, nausea that follows each meal. Julia, naturally lean, has managed lately to lose more weight. She told me last week that only bread and coffee don't make her ill. Oh, no, I groaned. We were talking on the phone. That evening I went over to inspect her smelly bare refrigerator. I wanted to throw out the plastic envelope of pale hamburger at the back. She wouldn't let me. Even chicken isn't cheap anymore, she murmured. We brewed some Nescafe, and we sat cross-legged on the living room tatami. After tales of her current lover, that brute, we passed to debating Levi-Strauss on the closing off of history. I, pious to the end, defended history. Although she still wears sumptuous kaftans and treats her lungs to Balkan Sobranis, the other reason she's not eating is that she's too stingy. One thickness of pain at a time. Julia may not want to go out at all, but many people no longer feel like leaving their apartments often. This city is neither a jungle, nor the moon, nor the Grand Hotel. In long shot, a cosmic smudge, a conglomerate of bleeding energies. Close up, it's a fairly legible printed circuit, a transistorized labyrinth of beastly tracks, a databank for asthmatic voice prints. Only some of its citizens have the right to be amplified and become audible. A black woman in her mid-50s wearing a brown cloth coat darker than the brown shopping bag she's carrying gets into a cab, sighing. 143rd and St. Nicholas. Pause. Okay? After the wordless, hairy young driver turns on the meter, she settles the shopping bag between her fat knees and starts crying. On the other side of the scarred plastic partition, Esau can hear her. With more people, there are more voices to tune out. It is certainly possible that the black woman is Doris, Julia's maid, every Monday morning, who, a decade ago, while down on St. Nicholas Avenue buying a six-pack and some macaroni salad, lost both of her small children in a fire that partly destroyed their two-room apartment. But if it is Doris, she does not ask herself why they burned up just that much and no more, why the two bodies lay next to each other in front of the TV at exactly that angle. And if it is Doris, it is certainly not Monday, Miss Julia's day, because the brown paper bag holds cast-off clothing from the woman whose seven-room apartment she's just cleaned, and Julia never throws out or gives away any of her clothes. It's not easy to clothe oneself. Since the Easter bombing in Bloomingdale's third-floor boutique section, shoppers in large department stores are body searched as they enter. Veined city. If it is not Doris, Julia's Doris, then perhaps it is Doris, too, whose daughter, B.A., Hunter College, 1965, having been bewitched, now lives with a woman the same age as her mother, only fatter, muscularly fat, and rich. Roberta Jarrell, the queen of the black arts, internationally known monologuist, poet, set designer, filmmaker, voice coach, originator of the Jarrell system of body awareness, movement, and functional coordination, and initiated voodoo priestess third class. Doris, too, also a maid, has not heard from her daughter for 7 years, a captivity of biblical length that the girl has been serving as assistant stage manager of the Roberta Jarrell Total Black Theater Institute, bookkeeper for Jarrell Real Estate Holdings in Dakar, Cap Haitien, and Philadelphia, decipherer and typist of the 2-volume correspondence between R.J. and Bertrand Russell, and on-call body servant to the woman whom no one, not even her husband, dares address as anything other than Miss Jarrell. After taking Doris, if she is Doris, to 143rd and St. Nicholas, the taxi driver, stopping for a red light on 131st Street, has a knife set against his throat by 3 brown boys. 2 are 11, 1 is 12, and surrenders his money. Off-duty sign blazing, he quickly returns to his garage on West 55th Street and unwinds in a corner on the far side of the Coke machine with a joint. However, if it is not Doris, but Doris, too, whom he has dropped at 143rd and St. Nicholas, the driver is not robbed, but immediately gets a fare to 173rd and Vise Avenue. He accepts. But he is afraid of getting lost, of never finding his way back. Writhing, uncontrollable city. In the years since the city stopped offering garbage collection to Morrisania and Hunts Point, the dogs that roam the streets have been subtly turning into coyotes. Julia doesn't bathe enough, suffering smells. Several days later, a middle-aged black woman carrying a brown shopping bag climbs out of a subway in Greenwich Village and accosts the first middle-aged white woman who's passing by. "Excuse me, ma'am, but can you tell me the way to the ladies' house of detention?" This is Doris III, whose only daughter, age 22, is well into her third 90-day sentence for being a... etc. "We know more than we can use. Look at all this stuff I've got in my head. Rockets and Venetian churches, David Bowie and Diderot, Nookmam and Big Macs, sunglasses and orgasms. How many newspapers and magazines do you read? For me, They're what candy or quaaludes or scream therapy are for my neighbors. I get my daily ration from the bilious Lincoln Brigade veteran who runs a tobacco shop on 110th Street, not from the blind newsagent in the wooden pillbox on Broadway who's nearer my apartment. And we don't know nearly enough what people are trying to do. All around us, as far as I can see, people are striving to be ordinary. This takes a great deal of effort. Ordinariness, generally considered to be safer, has gotten much rarer than it used to be. Julia called yesterday to report that an hour before she'd gone downstairs to take in her laundry. I congratulated her. People try to be interested in the surface. Men without guns are wearing mascara, glittering, prancing. Everyone's in some kind of moral drag. People are trying not to mind too much, not to be afraid. The daughter of Doris, too, has actually witnessed Roberta Jarrell, stately, unflinching, dip both hands up to the wrists in boiling oil, extract some shreds of cornmeal that she kneaded into a small pancake, and then briefly re-immerse pancake and hands. No pain, no scars. She had herself prepared by 20 hours of non-stop drumming and chanting, curtsying and asyncopated hand-clapping. Brackish holy water was passed around in a tin cup and sipped, and her limbs were smeared with goat's blood. After the ceremony, Doris Too's daughter and 4 other followers, including Henry, the husband of Roberta Jarrell, escorted her back to the hotel suite in Pétionville. Henry was not allowed to stay on the same floor this trip. Miss Jarrell gave instructions that she would sleep for 20 hours and was not to be awakened for any reason. Doris Too's daughter washed out Miss J's bloody robes and stationed herself on a wicker stool outside the bedroom door, waiting. I tried to get Julia to come out and play with me. 15 years have gone by since we met. See the city. On different days and nights, I've offered the roller derby in Brooklyn, a dog show, FAO Schwartz, the Tibetan Museum on Staten Island, a women's march, a new singles bar, midnight to dawn movies at the Elgin, Sunday's La Marqueta on Upper Park Avenue, a poetry reading, anything. She invariably refuses. Once I got her to a performance of Pélias et Mélisande at the Old Met, but we had to leave at the intermission. Julia was trembling with boredom, she claimed. Moments after the curtain rose on the Scene 1 set, a clearing in a dark forest, I knew it was a mistake. Ne me touchez pas, moans the heroine, leaning dangerously into a deep well. Her first words. The well-meaning stranger and would-be rescuer, equally lost, backs off, gazing lasciviously at the heroine's long hair. Julia shudders. Lesson. Don't take Mélisande to see Pélias et Mélisande. After getting out of jail, Doris III's daughter is trying to quit the life, but she can't afford to. Everything's gotten so expensive. From chicken, even wings and gizzards, to the Coromandel screen, once owned by a leading couturier of the 1930s, for which Lyle's mother bids $18,000 at a Park Burnett auction. People are economizing. Those who like to eat, a category that includes most people and excludes Julia, no longer do the week's marketing in an hour at one supermarket, but must give over most of a day exploring 10 stores to assemble a shopping cart's worth of food. They too are wandering about the city. The affluent, having invested in their pocket calculators, are now seeking uses for them. Unless already in a state of thraldom, like the daughter of Doris too, people are answering ads that magicians and healers place in newspapers. You don't have to wait for pie in the sky by and by when you die. If you want your pie now with ice cream on top, then see and hear Reverend Ike on TV and in person. Reverend Ike's church is not, repeat, not located in Harlem. New churches without buildings are migrating from west to east. People are worshiping the devil. On 53rd Street, west of the Museum of Modern Art, a blond boy with a shag cut who resembles Lyle tries to interest me in the process church of the final judgment. Have you ever heard of the process? When I say yes, he goes on as if I'd said no. I'll never get into the 5:30 screening if I stop to talk to him, but I hand over $1.50 for his magazine, and he keeps up with me, telling me about free breakfast programs the process runs for poor children, until I spin into the museum's revolving door. Breakfast programs, indeed. I thought they ate little children. People are videotaping their bedroom feats, tapping their own telephones. My good deed for November 12th. Calling Julia after a lapse of 3 weeks. Hey, how are you? Terrible, she answered, laughing. I laughed back and said, so am I, which wasn't exactly true. Together we laughed some more. The receiver felt sleek and warm in my hand. Want to meet? I asked. Could you come to my place again? I hate leaving the apartment these days. Dearest Julia, I know that already. I try not to reproach Julia for throwing away her children. Lyle, who is 19 now, called me the other morning from a phone booth at Broadway and 96th. I tell him to come up, and he brings me a story he's just completed, the first in years, which I read. It's not as accomplished as the stories that were published when he was 11, an undergrown, baby-voiced, pale boy, the Mozart of partisan review. At 11, Lyle hadn't yet taken all that acid, gone temporarily blind, been a groupie on a cross-country Rolling Stones tour, gotten committed twice by his parents, or attempted 3 suicides, all before finishing his junior year at Bronx Science. Lyle, with my encouragement, agrees not to burn his story. Taki 183, Payne 145, Turok 137, Charman 65, Think 160, Snake 128, Hondo 2, Stay High 149, Cobra 151, along with several of their friends, are sending insolent messages to Simone Weil, no Jewish American princess, she. She tells them there is no end to suffering. You think that, they answer, because you had migraines. So do you, she says tartly, only you don't know you have them. She also says that the only thing more hateful than a we is an I, and they go on blazoning their names on the subway cars. What relieves, soothes, helps. It's a pleasure to share one's memories. Everything remembered is dear, endearing, touching, precious. At least the past is safe, though we didn't know it at the time. We know it now, because it's in the past, because we have survived. Doris, Julia's Doris, has decorated her living room with photographs, toys, and clothes of her 2 dead children, which, each time you visit her, you have to spend the first half hour examining. Dry-eyed, she shows you everything. A cold wind comes shuddering over the city, the temperature drops, people are cold, but at least it clears off the pollution. From my roof on Riverside Drive, squinting through the acceptable air, I can see, across New Jersey, a rim of the Ramapo Hills. It helps to say no. One evening when I dropped by Julia's apartment to retrieve a book, her psychiatrist father calls. I'm expected to answer the phone. Covering the mouthpiece, I whisper, Cambridge. And across the room she whispers back, say I'm not home. He knows I'm lying. I know Julia never goes out, he says indignantly. She would have, I say, if she'd known you were going to call. Julia grins, heartbreaking, childish grin, and bites into a pomegranate I've brought her. What helps is having the same feelings for a lifetime. At a fundraising party on Beekman Place for the new Democratic Coalition's alternate mayoral candidate, I flirt with an elderly Yiddish journalist who doesn't want to talk about quotas and school boycotts in Queens. He tells me about his childhood in a shtetl 10 miles from Warsaw. Of course, you never heard of a shtetl. You are too young. It's a village where the Jews lived. He had been inseparable from another small boy. I couldn't live without him. He was more to me than my brothers. But you know, I didn't like him. I hated him. Whenever we played together, he would make me so mad. Sometimes we would hurt each other with sticks. Then he goes on to tell me how last month a shabby old man with stiff pink ears had come into the forward office, had asked for him, had come over to his desk, had stood there, had said, "Walter Abramson, you know who I am?" And how he'd gazed into the old man's eyes, scrutinized his bald skull and shopping bag body, and suddenly knew. "You're Isaac." And the old man said, "You're right." After 50 years. Can you imagine? Honestly, I don't know how I recognized him, said the journalist. It wasn't something in his eyes, but I did. What happened? So we fell into each other's arms, and I asked him about his family, and he told me they were all killed by the Nazis. And he asked me about my family, and I told him they were all killed. And you know what? After 15 minutes, everything he said infuriated me. I didn't care anymore if his whole family had been killed. I didn't care if he was a poor old man. I hated him. He trembled with vitality. I wanted to beat him with a stick. Sometimes it helps to change your feelings altogether, like getting your blood pumped out and replaced, to become another person. But without magic, there's no moral equivalent to the operation that makes transsexuals happy. A sense of humor helps. I haven't explained that Julia is funny, droll, witty, that she can make me laugh. I've made her sound like nothing but a burden. Sometimes it helps to be paranoid. Conspiracies have the merit of making sense. It's a relief to discover your enemies, even if first you have to invent them. Roberta Jarrell, for instance, has humorously instructed Doris Two's daughter and others on her payroll exactly how to thwart the enemies of her federally funded South Philadelphia Black Redress Center. White bankers, AMA psychiatrists, Black Panthers, cops, Maoists, and the CIA, with powders, with hexes, and with preternaturally smooth flat stones blessed by a Cuban Santera in Miami Beach. Julia, however, doesn't think she has any enemies, as, when her current lover again refuses to leave his wife, she still doesn't understand that she isn't loved. But when she goes down on the street, which happens less and less frequently, she finds the cars menacingly unpredictable. Flight is said to help. Dean and Shirley, Lyle's parents, having pulled out of the market last year, have bought into a condominium in Sarasota, Florida, whose city fathers recently voted, in order to make the city more seductive to tourists, to take out all the parking meters they installed downtown 5 years ago. Lyle's parents don't know how many weeks a year they can actually spend in the Ringling Brothers' hometown, but there's never been a decade when real estate values haven't gone up, right? And that crazy quiz kid, their son, will always have his room there if he wants it. It helps to feel guiltless about your sexual options, though it's not clear that many people actually manage this. After eventually finding his way back from Hunts Point into the well-lit grid of more familiar predators, the driver who had taken Doris to 143rd and St. Nicholas picks up a pale blonde boy with a shag cut who also resembles Lyle, and who says, as he gets into the cab, "West Street and the trucks, please." Lately, my sexual life has become very pure. I don't want it to be like a dirty movie. Having enjoyed a lot of dirty movies, I don't want it to be like that. Let's lie down together, love, and hold each other. Meanwhile, the real Lyle has again skipped his 4 o'clock class, Comp Lit 203, Sade and the Anarchist Tradition, and is sprawled in front of a TV set in the dormitory lounge. He's been watching more and more television lately, with a preference for serials like Secret Storm and As the World Turns. He has also started showing up at student parties instead of rebuffing his roommates' kindly, clumsy invitations. A good rule: any party is depressing if you think about it, but you don't have to think about it. I'm happy when I dance. touch me. What is upsetting? To read last letters from Stalingrad and grieve for those lost, all too human voices among the most devilish of enemies. No one is a devil if fully heard. To find everyone crazy, example, both Lyle and his parents, and to find the crazy particularly audible. To be afraid. To know that Lyle will be introduced to Roberta Jarrell next week at an elegant Soho loft party given in her honor after her speech at New York University, be recruited by her, drop out of college, and not be heard from again for at least 7 years. To feel how desperate everyone is. Doris, Julia's Doris, is being evicted from her apartment. She not only has no money to pay a higher rent, she wants to go on living in the place where her children perished. To learn that the government, using information that the law now requires be recorded on tape and stored indefinitely by banks, the telephone company, airlines, credit card companies, can know more about me, my more sociable activities anyway, than I do myself. If necessary, I could list most of the plane trips I've taken, and my old checkbook stubs are in a drawer somewhere. But I don't remember whom I telephoned exactly 4 months ago at 11 a.m., and never will. I don't think it was Julia. To find in myself the desire to stop listening to people's distress. To be unsure of how to exercise the powers I do possess. Julia had once fallen under the spell of an ex-ESP researcher, then a specialist in the North American Indian occult, who claimed to know how to help her. Most people who meet Julia, stunned by her vulnerability, take a crack at helping her. The pleasure of her beauty, which is the only gift Julia has ever been able to make to other people, helps too. The sorceress in question, Martha Wooten, was white, Westchester-born, crisp, a superb tennis player, rather like a gym teacher. I thought condescendingly she might be good for Julia, until, as part of a program for freeing Julia from her demons, she had her bay at the full moon on all fours. Then I swooped back into Julia's underfurnished life, performed my old rites of counter-exorcism, reason, self-preservation, pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will, and Martha Wooten vanished, metamorphosed rather, into one of the wicked witches of the West, setting up in Big Sur as Lady Lambda, head of the only Lucifer cult that practices deep breathing and bioenergetic analysis. Was I right to de-bewitch her? To be unable to change one's life. Doris III's daughter is back in jail. To live in bad air, to have an airless life. To feel there's no ground, that there's nothing but air. Our prospects, aleatoric, repetitious. On a Monday, after taking Doris, Julia's Doris, home from cleaning Julia's apartment, the taxi driver stops to pick up 3 14-year-old Puerto Ricans on 111th and 2nd Avenue. If they don't rob him, they will get in the cab, ask to be taken to the juice bar in the alley by the 59th Street Bridge, and give him a big tip. Not good. A hand-lettered sign pasted at eye level on the bare brick wall of a housing project on the corner of 90th and Amsterdam reads, plaintively, "Stop killing. Wounded City." Although none of the rules for becoming more alive is valid, it is healthy to keep on formulating them. Here is a solid conservative rule deposited by Goethe with Eckermann. Every healthy effort is directed from the inner to the outer world. Put that in your hashish pipe and smoke it. But let's say or suppose we're not up to being healthy. Then there's only one way left to get to the world. We could be glad of the world if we were flying to it for refuge. Actually, this world isn't just one world now, as this city is actually layers of cities. Behind the many thicknesses of pain, try to connect with the single will for pleasure that moves even in the violence of streets and beds, of jails and opera houses. In the words of Reverend Ike, you can be happy now. By an extraordinary coincidence, there is one day when Doris, Doris 2, and Doris 3, who don't know each other, may all be found under the same roof in Reverend Ike's United Church and Science of Living Institute, attending a 3 p.m. Sunday healing and blessing meeting. As for their prospects of being happy, none of the three Dorises is convinced. Julia, anybody, hey, how are you? Terrible, yes, but you laughed. Some of us will falter, but some of us will be brave. A middle-aged black woman in a brown coat carrying a brown suitcase leaves a bank and gets into a cab. I'm going to the Port of Authority, please. Doris, too, is taking the bus to Philadelphia. After 7 years, she's going to confront Roberta Jarrell and try to get her daughter back. Some of us will get more craven. Meanwhile, most of us will never know what's happening. Let's dig through the past. Let's admire whatever, whenever we can. But people now have such grudging sympathy for the past. If I come out to dinner in my spacesuit, will you wear yours? We'll look like Dale and Flash Gordon, maybe, but who cares? What everybody thinks now. One can form an alliance only with the future. The prospects are for more of the same, as always, but I refuse. Suppose, just suppose, leaden soul, you would try to lead an exemplary life, to be kind, honorable, helpful, just. On whose authority? And you'll never know that way what you most long to know. Wisdom requires a life that is singular in another way, that's perverse. To know more, you must conjure up all the lives there are and then leave out whatever fails to please you. Wisdom is a ruthless business. But what about those I love? Although I don't believe my friends can't get on without me, surviving isn't so easy, and I probably can't survive without them. If we don't help each other, forlorn, demented bricklayers who've forgotten the location of the building we were putting up. Taxi! I hail a cab during the Wednesday afternoon rush hour and ask the driver to get to Julia's address as fast as he can. Something in her voice on the phone lately, but she seems all right when I come in. She'd even been out the day before to take in a batik made last year to be framed. It will be ready in a week. And when I ask to borrow a back issue of a feminist magazine that I spy under a pile of old newspapers on the floor, she mentions 3 times that I must return it soon. I promise to come by next Monday, reassured by the evidence of those petty forms that Julia's hold on life often takes. I'm ready to leave. But then she asks me to stay on just a few minutes more, which means that it's changing. She wants to talk sadness. On cue, like an old vaudevillian, I go into my routines of secular ethical charm. They seem to work. She promises to try. What I'm doing. I leave the city often, but I always come back. I made Lyle give me his story, his only copy, of course, knowing that despite his promise, if I returned it to him, he'd burn it, as he's burned everything he's written since he was 15. I've given it to a magazine editor I know. I exhort, I interfere, I'm impatient. For God's sake, it isn't that hard to live. One of the pieces of advice I give is, don't suffer future pain. And whether or not the other person heeds my advice, at least I've learned something from what was said. I give fairly good advice to myself. That late Wednesday afternoon, I told Julia how stupid it would be if she committed suicide. She agreed. I thought I was convincing. 2 days later, she left her apartment again and killed herself, showing me that she didn't mind doing something stupid. I would. Even when I announce to friends that I'm going to do something stupid, I don't really think it is. I want to save my soul, that timid wind. Some nights I dream of dragging Julia back by her long hair just as she's about to jump into the river, or I dream she's already in the river. I'm standing on my roof facing New Jersey. I look down and see her floating by, and I leap from the roof, half falling, half swooping like a bird, and seize her by the hair and pull her out. Julia, darling Julia, you weren't supposed to lean any further into the well, daring anyone with good intentions to come closer, to save you, to be kind. You were at least supposed to die in a warm bed, mute, surrounded by the guilty, clumsy people who adored you, leaving them frustrated and resentful of you to the end. I'm not thinking of what the lordly, polluted Hudson did to your body before you were found. Julia, plastic face in the waxy casket, how could you be as old as you were? You're still the 23-year-old who started an absurdly pedantic conversation with me on the steps of Widener Library. So thin, so prettily affected, so electric, so absent, so much younger than I, who was 4 years younger than you, so tired already, so exasperating, so moving. I want to hit you. How I groaned under the burden of our friendship, but your death is heavier. Why you went under while others equally absent from their lives survive is a mystery to me. Say we are all asleep. Do we want to wake up? Is it fair if I wake up and you, most of you, don't? Fair, you sneer. What's fair got to do with it? It's every soul for itself. But I didn't want to wake up without you. You're the tears and things. I'm not. You weep for me. I'll weep for you. Help me. I don't want to weep for myself. I'm not giving up. Sisyphus, I cling to my rock. You don't have to chain me. Stand back. I roll it up, 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 and down we go. I knew that would happen. See, I'm on my feet again. See, I'm starting to roll it up again. Don't try to talk me out of it. Nothing could tear me away from this rock.